Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, a community mourns after a deadly attack on a synagogue.
In my own interpretation, Lori took the bullet for all of us. She died to protect all of us.
We have extensive coverage tonight on the Poway Synagogue shooting, including new details on the case that will be charged as a hate crime. And as a week of remembrance begins, those marking the end of the Holocaust pay respect to the victims of the Poway shooting.
It's a case in which law enforcement was able to identify a man consumed with hate and bent on mass murder and stop him before he could carry out his attack.
The FBI says it stopped a planned terror attack in Southern California. How an Army veteran is accused of trying to set off bombs in Long Beach.
I don't want vengeance. I don't want vengeance. I want more government control over these people selling guns to kids.
And a look at how Mexico's crime problem is being fueled by guns from the U.S. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Monday, April 29th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. Services are wrapping up tonight for the woman killed in a shooting at a synagogue in Poway over the weekend. Lori Kay was one of 4 people shot. The 3 survivors are out of the hospital and recovering. Police say 19-year-old John Earnest burst into the Chabad of Poway on Saturday, the last day of the Passover, and opened fire. Our coverage tonight includes the story of a man who confronted the shooter at the synagogue, also Rabbi Scott Meltzer of SDSU on the community reaction. But first, KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar with today's funeral service in Poway.
Hundreds of people came out here to the synagogue today in Poway, where just 2 days ago, a gunman showed up here and opened fire, killing 60-year-old Lori Kay and injuring 3 others. The synagogue was at capacity and about 100 people stood outside to watch the service on a screen. I spoke to several people of various faiths who traveled hours to stand in solidarity with this congregation. Interfaith leaders, law enforcement officials, including the sheriff and San Diego police chief, and elected representatives from Poway and San Diego were in attendance. Lori's daughter, husband, sister, and friend gave remarks about her life. They said she died a hero trying to save the rabbi of the synagogue.
I would like to hold a moment of peaceful prayer for the victims of gun violence, religious violence, racism, and anti-Semitism all over the world. And I want to pay specific mention to 2 recent events, the tragedy in New Zealand and in Sri Lanka. We are all a part of the human species, and this alone will forever unite us in love and in solidarity. I would like to hold a moment of peaceful prayer and celebration for all of the Jewish people on every part of our planet.
The 3 other victims of this shooting have all been released from the hospital and are recovering. Reporting from Poway, Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
The accused shooter will be arraigned tomorrow on murder and other charges. District Attorney Summer Steffen says the case will be tried as a hate crime. KPBS reporter Steve Walsh has a closer look at Saturday's shooting.
My deepest sympathies to all of those affected.
Throughout the weekend, the nation focused on Poway. 6 months after a single gunman killed members of a Jewish temple in Pittsburgh, another lone gunman entered the Chabad of Poway Saturday, injuring 3 people, including the rabbi, and killing 60-year-old Lori Kay. After being released from the hospital Sunday, Rabbi Yisroel Goldstein emerged from the Chabad of Poway to talk about what he saw on that last day of Passover.
I turn around and I see a sight that undescribable. Here is a young man standing with a rifle, pointing right at me. And I look at him. He had sunglasses on. I couldn't see his eyes. I couldn't see his soul.
A member of the congregation charged the gunman. Another member of the synagogue, an off-duty member of the Border Patrol from the El Centro sector, fired several shots as he sped away. The mayor of Poway and President Trump called it a hate crime.
Obviously, looks right now, based on my last conversations, looks like a hate crime.
There were vigils throughout the weekend as people from San Diego showed support for the Jewish congregation. At the same time, flowers piled up in a makeshift memorial across the street from Chabad of Poway. 19-year-old Josh Earnest was arrested after fleeing the scene. He's charged with 1 count of first-degree murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. It's been treated as a hate crime. He's also being charged with igniting a fire outside a mosque on March 23rd. He's expected to be in court Tuesday. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Among the Good Samaritans who tried to stop the synagogue shooter is an Army veteran named Oscar Stewart. He was in the synagogue at the time of the attack. Stewart talked about why he ran after the shooter after hearing gunshots.
All I remember is everybody was running. I heard the gunshots. Everybody ran out. I jumped up and I ran to the lobby. I was in the military, and I think that's what I ran to fire. That's what I did. I didn't plan it. I didn't think about it. It's just what I did. So they say I'm a hero. I don't think I'm a hero. I just did what I did. And I chased him out into the street, into his car. I punched his car. Then he was going to pick up his weapon again. So being in the military, I knew that you have 5 feet. If a weapon is ineffective within 5 feet. So I was trying to get that 5 feet in. I saw him going to pick up the weapon again. So I punched the car. He dropped it and turned the ignition of the car on.
The shooting in Poway is weighing heavily on the Holocaust Remembrance in Washington. Today marks 74 years since the U.S. military liberated the Dachau concentration camp in Germany. Survivors lit candles during a ceremony today at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. Speakers noted the shooting in Poway as a reminder that Jews continue to face hate crimes around the world.
Who could have imagined that today we would be in mourning again? Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims who were targeted solely because they were Jews.
6 months ago, a white supremacist murdered 11 people in a synagogue in Pittsburgh in the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. And on Saturday, another white supremacist murdered Lori Gilbert Kay, Zichronah Livracha, and wounded 3 others as they prayed in a synagogue in Poway, California.
Following this Poway synagogue shooting, condolences are coming in from around the world. And here to talk to us more about the community reaction is Rabbi Meltzer with SDSU. First of all, I just wanted to extend my condolences following this tragedy, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, after this recent act of violence, there are some people calling for people to stand up against hate. You lectured this morning. What was your message?
And the message is that there is a segment of our society that's always been there, that as one, an economic recession, and two, as our society has really come to express the values that we believe in, as it relates that all people are created equal and should have fair and equal access to all the goods that we share as Americans, there are people who are very threatened. And people who feel unhappy with their lot in life are looking to blame others. And so this image that America used to be something special, but now it's different. And that different is because of people who have come, who have destroyed our image of a very simple, white, of Western European descent America, are taking away our way of life. And it has just tragically often been the case in history that as a disgruntled minority turns angry and violent, that amongst the list of people that are hated and feared, ultimately, the Jews top the list. And so we're seeing that expression. It's been for a couple of years that as white supremacy has become more visible in our society, as people have come out of the shadows and have declared a voice, even in public and national debate, as we have a representative of Congress questioning what's wrong with talking about white nationalism, it's not surprising that some segment of that hate-filled white supremacist mindset is truly violent. And we're seeing expressions of that.
And this weekend's shooting in Poway comes months after an attack at a synagogue in Pittsburgh. Does it feel different because of the close proximity?
Yes, without a doubt. So that the shooting happened on the 6-month anniversary of the Pittsburgh shooting, of the murder of 11 Jews at the Tree of Life Synagogue, makes it even more tragic. We know from other tragedies in mass murders in American history that the dates become significant. On top of that, two things are true. One is this is just down the street. And so as much as we all feel affected as Americans, we feel affected as Jews, Pittsburgh's far away. And so we watched on the news as people in Pittsburgh said, I can't believe it happened in Pittsburgh, but I can't believe it happened in San Diego. That somehow, one, it's just down the street or up the street, as the case may be. And two, this is Southern California. This is San Diego. We've got our challenges, we've got our differences, we've got serious issues, but we don't do this. And, well, we do. And that's where we are now. And so as people say that they are shocked by what has happened, I don't think people are really shocked. Anybody who thought that white supremacist violence had ended in America yesterday or 3 days ago, I don't know where they get that from.
And going back to the call to stand up against hate, you hear that after a tragedy like this, but what does that mean to you?
We need to make sure that the most ignorant and most hateful do not set the agenda for who we are as a community. We need to stand up in response to that. And again, my children tease me, but sometimes it's about wearing a button. It's about never being afraid to stick our nose into a conversation to say, that's anti-Semitic, that's racist, that's ugly. And the reality is my kids come to it much more naturally than I do. I grew up at a time where, I had more voice than some, but not enough voice to really think everything that I say. And never again. I will not stand quiet when anybody has their civil rights, their human rights, or their safety threatened. And we need to feel that way about everybody. It can't just be because it's a synagogue, 15 minutes from my house. It needs to be at any moment that there's any act of intolerance, be it verbal, be it implicit, or be it actually violent.
Thank you so much.
It's truly a pleasure to be here.
You can find all of our coverage of the Poway Synagogue shooting at kpbs.org. We will have more in just a bit later in this newscast, including an interview with the regional director of the Anti-Defamation League.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, we look at the rise of right-wing domestic terrorism and what federal agencies are doing to combat it. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Rain is expected to last through tomorrow morning. Erin Calandra has details in tonight's forecast.
Well, happy Monday to you. I'm sure you probably had to pull out that umbrella from time to time because we have a low pressure system. It came driving on in off of the Pacific. You can see this counterclockwise rotation. That's what you see with a low pressure system. So we're seeing some scattered showers, even some storms popping up through this evening, even into tomorrow. So here's our futurecast, and this is 7 p.m. It looks like most of that moisture is off to the east of us, but we're still going to see some lingering showers at times. And again, that could even last into tomorrow morning. So just expect to perhaps use that umbrella as the kiddos are standing out at the school bus stop. So for tonight, we're talking showers, just a passing shower at 60 degrees for the temperature. And Oceanside, 55 degrees, drier conditions there compared to Chula Vista, where we could see a shower. Borrego Springs at 57, and it's going to remain nice and clear. Now, tomorrow, we have this cold air diving down from the north, so it's going to cut short right around Los Angeles or so. Our temperatures, they're not really going to change very much throughout the week. In fact, we're staying right around our average temperature, which is around 67 degrees for San Diego. Lots of sunshine, a few clouds still kind of lingering around, especially in the morning. It's going to clear out by the afternoon. Oceanside at 67 degrees, Chula Vista 65 for the high, and Mount Laguna reaching 56 degrees. Late week, well, we're back to our typical pattern. It's going to be dry and pleasant. We'll have lots of sunshine to enjoy. So temperatures this week in the upper 60s to low 70s. Notice by Saturday, we go back down to 69 degrees. Inland, we could see those showers kind of lingering in the morning tomorrow, and then the rest of the week, it's going to be sunny and nice. Close to 80 degrees by Friday. And in the deserts, we'll be in the 80s, reaching the 90s by Friday. It's going to remain nice and sunny. And in the mountains, pretty cool in the 50s, reaching those low to mid 60s by Friday with plenty of sunshine to enjoy. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra. Back to you.
Mexico is seeing the highest level of homicides in its history. Experts say a vast majority of Mexico's killings are done with U.S. guns smuggled south. In part one of this two-part series, KPBS border reporter Jean Guerrero looks at the problem and who's it affecting.
Julieta Sanchez is a U.S. permanent resident who lives in San Diego. She brought her son, Fernando, from Mexico when he was 15.
He was very hardworking. He liked work and he was very active.
Fernando finished school, then worked installing floors and carpets in Chula Vista. But eventually, he began to struggle with addiction, using crystal meth.
He started getting skinny, and I wondered what it could be. And then he started saying things that didn't make sense.
Rehab was too expensive in the U.S. for Sanchez, so she sent him back to Tijuana, where rehab is more affordable. The day they were going to check him in, she says, Fernando was shot and killed in Tijuana. He was 29. No arrests were made, and the case is still a mystery.
I don't want vengeance. I don't want vengeance. I want more government control over these people selling guns to kids.
Sanchez can be pretty sure the gun used to kill her son came from the U.S. Tijuana's police chief, Marco Antonio Sotomayor, says nearly all of the guns used to kill people in Mexico are smuggled in from the U.S.
We know that those weapons come from the U.S. because inside Mexico, there's no way for them to buy them. They buy them in places like Arizona, Nevada, because of the weak gun laws, gun shows.
Mexico has only one gun shop. It's controlled by the military in Mexico City. The gun laws for civilians are extremely strict, with 6-month background checks and a federal registry of every person who buys a gun. Person-to-person firearm sales are prohibited. But both Mexico and Tijuana are seeing record levels of gun violence, with homicides nationwide hitting an all-time high of 33,000 last year. Sotomayor says Tijuana police have seized more than 2,000 weapons in the city during the past 3 years, and most have U.S. markings.
It's very hard to buy a gun in Mexico. We have a very intensive process before you can buy one. If you guys had that, it would be really helpful.
President Trump has painted a bleak picture of criminals and drugs pouring into the U.S. from Mexico. But speaking at the National Rifle Association Forum this month, he didn't mention the U.S. guns pouring into Mexico. In fact, he announced that the U.S. was withdrawing from an international arms agreement aimed at cracking down on illegal weapons trading.
Every day you stand up for our God-given rights without exception, without fail, and without apology. Together we are fighting for the timeless values that have built and sustained our nation.
Well, we're seeing more of the polymer pistol.
Ernesto Diaz is a special agent with the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or ATF. He says there's been an increase in large caliber weapons being smuggled into Mexico from the U.S.
Those weapons are being used by drug cartel to enforce their business, if you will, to go after law enforcement, Mexican authorities, and innocent civilians.
Diaz says there's also been an increase in U.S. gun parts going into Mexico and being assembled there. About 70% of weapons seized at crime scenes in Mexico last year that were submitted to U.S. authorities were traceable to the U.S. Diaz says ATF is trying to combat the situation by going after smugglers in the U.S. Many are U.S. citizens.
There are individuals associated with cartels that reside in the United States.
Sanchez, who believes her son died due to the lack of control over U.S. guns, says she hopes something is done about the problem soon.
They killed my son, then they're going to kill another, and it's going to keep happening. They're young. These men are young.
The gun-fueled violence south of the border has contributed to the increasing number of people seeking asylum in the U.S., and experts believe that controlling the flow of guns into Mexico would decrease illegal immigration and asylum claims at the U.S. border. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
Part 2 of Jean Garreau's report will look at what's being done to stop the flow of U.S. weapons. It airs tomorrow night on KPBS. The FBI says it stopped a planned terror attack in Long Beach. Mark Domingo, a U.S. Army veteran, is accused of providing material support to terrorists. The FBI says he planned to set off a bomb at an event attended by white supremacists in Long Beach. Agents say he was motivated by revenge for the New Zealand mosque attacks. Court records show Domingo also talked with informants about attacks on Jews, churches, and police. The synagogue shooting in Poway is highlighting a rise in reported hate crimes. KPBS Midday Edition co-host Jade Hyman talked about this with the regional director of the Anti-Defamation League.
Joining me is Tammy Gillies. She is the regional director of the Anti-Defamation League in Imperial counties and here in San Diego. The Anti-Defamation League is an organization that fights against anti-Semitism and bigotry of all kinds. Tammy, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Tammy, you met with the victims' families over the weekend. What did they tell you?
Talking to the victims' families and to the witnesses of this event was something that even in my 12 years at ADL, I had not been prepared to do. These were people that were impacted just worshiping, going to pray in their own synagogue. And because it was the Jewish Sabbath, these folks were not able to use their cell phones and call their family members and friends. So I was able to do that for them and tell their families and their friends that they were safe. It's heartbreaking that our community is going through this.
A vigil is being held tonight at Poway High School. This follows 2 vigils that happened over the weekend. What do you hope people take away from these vigils?
We hope people come away with a sense of community. Tonight's vigil is really about bringing all faith communities together to support each other, to say that really San Diego, Poway, this community is no place for hate.
And how do you hope people respond in light of this tragedy?
I hope that we can really understand that words matter, that what you say to somebody, the way you treat somebody, it matters. We're in a place in this country where the rhetoric has just really divided us.
And, earlier this month, the ADL held a conference with law enforcement about the rise in white supremacist extremist activity. What are you all seeing nationally, and what are you seeing here in San Diego?
Right, we have seen this trending up for the past several years. In fact, stay tuned. Tomorrow, ADL will be releasing our annual audit of anti-Semitic events. And while I can't give you the numbers, I can tell you that the numbers are not good.
I know in a presentation it was mentioned that 70% of the extremist-related killings in the United States over the past 15 years and 100% in 2018 were perpetrated by individuals aligned with white supremacist extremism. Do people have a good context or perception of what's really happening in this country?
I don't think so, and one of the things that ADL would like is to call upon the administration to do some funding for countering violent extremism and looking at these trends in white supremacists. Really, the focus has been on countering Islamic extremism, and we need to go back to countering extremism of all types, especially in light of what the data shows.
And why do you think we're seeing this increase in violence from these groups?
Well, going back to the rhetoric, there's an anger in our country right now, a divisiveness, and it is spread on the internet. Even after what happened in Poway, we at the ADL have received threats, hate emails. There are people that are celebrating what happened at the Poway shooting, and it is spread, and we've got to put a stop to that, and we do need to hold tech companies accountable. So we don't want to step on anybody's First Amendment rights, obviously, but spreading hate and inciting hate is a whole different thing.
And you mentioned holding tech companies accountable. Is that the way these messages are being spread, through social media?
It really is. We used to talk about hate groups and how they gather and when they have rallies, but you no longer have to do that. It comes right to you. on your computer. And this is how people are really becoming radicalized.
What can individuals do to combat extremism and terrorism?
I think that they need to talk to their elected officials. There are things that the government needs to do to help from their end, putting resources behind this. And I think communities, like doing what we're doing tonight, coming together as a community. On May 19th, ADL holds our annual Walk Against Hate, coming out to stand up to this, being a voice, and we're asking everyone from the President of the United States to the President of your local school board, use your bully pulpit to stand up against hate.
I've been speaking with Anti-Defamation League Regional Director Tammy Gillies. Tammy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Another 2020 presidential candidate will campaign in San Diego. How former Texas Congressman Beto O'Rourke is looking for support in California. And on Midday Edition, Real Science, the Natural History Museum and the Digital Gem Cinema renew their science and film collaboration. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.